Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
From the incredible gallery, bar, book, and games here at Ocean Casino Resort, it's the JAKIB Media Pregame Show with yours truly, Marc Farzetta, Derek Gunn, and Seth Joyner, getting you ready for Eagles Commanders Monday Night Football edition. The Eagles, of course, come into this game at an undefeated 8-0, while the Commanders come in with a new quarterback, different from Carson Wentz, in that Week 3 matchup where the Eagles had such success with the 24-8 victory. A much different ballgame expected to play out tonight. One of the main things I know I'll be focusing on tonight, I don't know about you gentlemen, is the turnover battle. I know we could always talk about it in every game throughout the NFL season, but the Washington Commanders give the football away a good amount, take the football away, second fewest turnovers forced in the NFL, while the Eagles do a heck of a job in protecting that football. So can it be as simple as protecting the football tonight and being disciplined in order to improve to 9-0 tonight, D. Gunn?
Well, it's easy to say that on the surface, but if you follow the letter of the law for the first 10 weeks of the National Football League, always expect the unexpected. The Eagles are the best in the business in terms of protecting the football. Washington doesn't take the ball away that much, but this is Monday night. Washington has a chip on its shoulder because of how they were embarrassed early in the season by this Philadelphia Eagles team. And if you look at this Washington team over the last 5 games, they have played a much better brand of football. They are 3-2 in their last 5 games, and all 5 of their games have been decided by 4 points or less. Go to last week. They had Minnesota on the ropes. You know, they had Minnesota down 17-7 in the fourth quarter, and Taylor Heineke went to his Brett Favre motif, and he serves up an interception that leads to Minnesota's tying touchdown. But here's the one thing to keep in mind. Minnesota's a high-scoring team. Washington held that team to 20 points, Seth. So I don't think it's going to be similar to what we saw the first time around.
It won't be similar, but, you know, the Eagles had a hard time running the ball in the first matchup. I got to believe that, you know, this is one of those games they want to come out and try to reestablish the run. I'm not so sure that they can do it. But they don't have to win this football game by running the football. I've been impressed, to say the least, by the coaching staff and what they've been able to do with the wealth of talent that they have. Each week it's a different guy. It's A.J. Brown one week. It's Devontae Smith another week. It's Dallas Goedert another week. Then Miles Sanders rips off a 100-yard game. It's just, you know, they look at the opponent's defense and they figure out a way. They figure out where the matchup is and where they can make hay, and they go to work every single week. So it's going to be interesting to see, because we're talking about the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, it's going to be a little different, because you're talking about Tyler Heineke now instead of one Carson Wentz, who gave up 9 sacks the first time that they played against this football team. He's not going to hold on to the ball. They're going to come out and try to establish the run based upon what we saw against the Texans with Dameon Pierce, 139 yards rushing on 27 carries. I guarantee you that the Washington Commanders come out and try to establish the running game to begin with, to set up the play-action pass off of it.
All right, some basic football right there when it comes to what the Commanders could be doing. But when it comes to the defensive side of things, I know one of the things I was looking for in that Week 3 matchup against the Commanders was how Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio were going to be attacking Jalen Hurts. Does that change at all in this matchup? What do you think they learned, Seth, in that Week 3 matchup where Jalen Hurts was able to throw for over 300 yards, post another 100-plus passer rating type game, and a 3-touchdown game as well?
Well, listen, it's not something that they really want to do, but if they're going to win this football game, they're going to have to put pressure on Jalen Hurts. One thing that they don't do, the teams haven't been doing against, the RPO and the read option, is they haven't been taking their shots at Jalen Hurts. I think that, if I was a defensive coordinator, every single time he stuck the ball out, I'd make him hand it off. I'd take the P and the O off of the RPO, and the option off of the read option. I just make him hand it off every single time. I crash my defensive end every single time. But the Eagles have done a great job. I mean, look what they did against the Cowboys. Against the Cowboys, they put Micah Parsons in conflict, almost every single play. I mean, it was a numbers game. And they figured out that, hey, on the snap of the ball, if we motion a tight end across or wide receiver cross as we ran the read option, now Micah's he's in a quandary. Because that guy running with that motion guy can't get across fast enough. Now he's got to honor contain, but he's also got to honor the fact that Jalen might run it. Okay, so if he takes the dive, Jalen can get outside. He can run or pass it. If he focuses on Jalen, then that guy that's trailing is going to come right up underneath him. It's an easy dump pass, and there's no one out there. I mean, listen, the way that you defend that, in my opinion, is you play some cover two, but from a defensive perspective, you can really force the issue with cover two on the backside, especially if it's into the boundary, because now you've got that extra guy there, but your safety's going to have to play a lot more of that half of the field than a true halves to be able to protect it. So they put defenses, in a precarious position just because of the numbers, because there's no defender for Jalen Hurts. If he decides to pull the ball down and run, hey, listen, there's nothing you can do but hope that the defense can react. But I think if they're going to have some success, I think you're going to have to hit Jalen every single time that he sticks that ball out there, whether, and make him hand it off every single time. And then in obvious passing situations, which you don't really want to do with this wide receiver core and this, top three tight end, in my opinion, you don't want to have to pressure and give him an opportunity to pre-snap read and hit a big one down the field. But I think you're going to have to do that in order to compete.
One thing you're also seeing over the last couple of games against this Eagles RPO offense is that the opposing defenses, their ends are not crashing down the line now. They're being more disciplined, staying at home and forcing Jalen to hand the football off. So it's going to be interesting to see if Washington follows suit, to see if they can keep the running game and Jalen Hurts between the tackles all night.
One of the interesting things. Oh, go ahead.
The way that you remedy that, though, D-Gun, is the Eagles run it in a way where he gets the ball, he turns, and he's reading right now. If you do it the way Lamar Jackson does it now, okay, where you ride the guy down into the hole, now you really put the defensive end into conflict, because he just might keep it and run right behind and let the running back be a blocker for him. So look for that type of adjustment. If you're just going to freeze your defensive, your D end right there and force him to hand it off, then you've got to figure out what's the counter to that. The counter is when you go read option, you gotta ride that guy all the way down into the hole and force that guy to make a decision. If he doesn't make a decision, then Jalen just pulls it and just runs right behind Miles Sanders. There's nobody there, and they're less a defender there because that defensive end is still standing out there.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about this matchup in particular, and rightfully so, because it's only their second time facing this divisional opponent. It's their second time around with the divisional opponent in the Washington Commanders. What have you learned from that first time playing against Jalen Hurts? And have we reached a point yet where Jalen Hurts is a guy that you don't want to have beat you by throwing the football? Because coming into this season, we had talked so much about the athleticism of Jalen Hurts and how much of a threat he is as a runner. Well, have we gotten to a point, especially over the last 3 games of Jalen Hurts, where for the first time in his career he's posted a passer rating of plus 100 for 3 straight games, going for a 4th straight tonight, and he has had success, as we know, against this Washington football team in years past. Have we finally gotten to the point where defenses are looking at Jalen Hurts and saying, I need to respect him as a thrower before I respect him as an athlete?
D-Gun. What a year makes. I mean, who would ever thunk that we could be sitting here talking about Jalen Hurts as a pass threat? That you're more worried about him sitting in the pocket, and throwing the football than a guy, that actually runs. I kind of prefer to have him, running with the football rather than throwing it. My goodness. I mean, before the season started, most people didn't even believe that he was a starting quarterback material. And now we're talking about him as a passing threat. Hey, listen, I mean, the Eagles are sitting in a fantastic place when the guy that, that most pundits believe couldn't make the transition, now he's a passing threat.
It's funny because any defensive coordinator that tries to scheme a play against this Eagles offense, it comes down to pick your poison. Do you want them to beat you with the run or the pass? Now, if I'm Washington, they held the Eagles to the fewest rushing yards this season, 72 yards when they played them back in week number 3. But Jalen Hurts carved them up through the air. If I'm Washington, if I'm Jack Del Rio, I'm willing to give up the more rushing yards because I'm more concerned about them going deep on my secondary. Now, we criticized Washington's secondary early on in the season. They've been playing much better over the last 4 weeks. They're starting to get healthier. They got rid of one guy who was a problem in the secondary, and when they got rid of him, all of a sudden the guys who have stepped in have played a lot better, a lot more cohesive football. So if I'm Washington's secondary, I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm thinking like Jonathan Gannon now. I don't want anything to get behind me. Keep everything in front of you. And Washington has done a much better job in that regard.
The way that defenses play in the league now, it is pick your poison. If you think that your front six, and more times than not, that's what it is, the way that it's structured now, you feel as though your front six can handle the run, then you go too high safety. You go too high safety, and you have the benefit of rotating into cover 4, cover 6, cover 2. You can go cover 2 man. There's so many different things that you can do, but you give the perception that we're in too high safety, and if we're in too high safety, we're going to prevent anything from getting over the top and anything from getting deep. Well, guess what? Most teams will look at that setup and say, hey, we got to run the ball. When we see too high safety, it's an automatic check. We're going to run the ball. Now, there were times in the last game where the Eagles, had that mentality, but it didn't necessarily work out that way because a lot of what the Eagles do is across the formation type runs. They want to get on the edges. When you're playing an elite level defensive line with elite level defensive tackles like the Washington Commanders have, you have to run the ball right at them. You run it right at them. Why? And why do you do that? Because the minute that the offensive linemen are engaged, you want the running back to be hitting the hole.
That's right.
Because now he's going, before they can get off the block, he's going to pick up some yards. But if that play is trying to get to the 4, 6, 8 hole or the 3, 5, 7 hole on the other side, you're trying to get outside. The more time you give those guys to get off blocks, because they're very good with their hands and they're very good down the line of scrimmage, and they're going to run plays down. They like to jump gaps as well. So if you can catch them jumping gaps as you hit it right now, you can make some things happen.
Before we go any further and talk about a certain anniversary that's coming up here for the Eagles, one that's very important to Nick Sirianni, we do want to tell you about one of our latest sponsors here on the JAKIB Media Pregame Show in Salus University.
Continue your communication sciences and disorders education at Salus University within the Doctor of Audiology or Masters of Science in Speech-Language Pathology programs. With state-of-the-art labs, on-campus clinics, and extensive externship opportunities, students position themselves to be at the top of the job market. Stand out in the audiology and speech-language pathology profession by visiting salus.edu.
Welcome into the sponsorship group, Salus University. Seth, you alluded to it a second ago, what a difference a year makes. Well, 1 year ago from this week, Nick Sirianni delivered his very famous flower power speech to the Eagles locker room, and myself included. I didn't jump out or jump away from the Eagles during his introductory press conference. I didn't say, oh, this guy can't command a podium. How does he command a sideline? I may have asked that question, but I didn't say the man couldn't do it. However, flower power, I was with a lot of different people that said the same thing. I'm out. This Nick Sirianni guy can't do it. He can't be an NFL head coach. How do you identify with football players of all people? Imagine talking to Seth Joyner about daisies. Not happening. But somehow, magically, it worked. The Eagles rolled through the rest of that season. They were able to make the playoffs. And now we're talking about, for the first time in their history, an 8-0 Eagles team, possibly after 9-0 team.
Can I do one better?
Please.
Okay, so have you seen that the Eagles have a new mascot?
The Eagles have a new mascot?
Yes.
I have not seen
an
this.
ode to dog mentality. They have a dog that's at the facility. He's a little poodle type dog.
Okay.
and his name is Reggie.
Oh, geez.
And it's an ode to dog mentality. And I looked at the dog last night, and I was like, man, you couldn't have gotten me a pit bull or
Rottweiler
or
or something,
Rottweiler or
Great
a
Dane,
Mastiff or something like that. But Reggie's the ode to dog mentality.
And Reggie's a poodle.
And you know something? I'm not even going to push against it.
Well, then how can you? The guy literally is talking about how you got to be Seth. You got to be a flower, okay? I know you made it to the Eagles Hall of Fame and everything, but did you do that by thinking about how you could be a flower in your career?
No,
he's asking you to soften up.
No,
Never.
The only kind of planting I ever wanted to do was quarterbacks in the turf.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. I love that. That's a perfect Seth Joyner answer. But if I would have told you at that time when he's delivering this speech, this is what's going to make people rally. And now, I don't know if it was the fact that he literally made this speech and everyone at the same time in that locker room or in that meeting room said, hell yeah, we're flowers, or if it was the reaction of people that weren't exactly optimistic about it, like myself, that rallied the room.
I think what wound up happening is, he made the comment. In the midst of making the comment, it was a lot more in-depth conversation about what that flower represented than what we got. We just got the little pansy part of it, where we're like, we're like, really?
Yeah.
Flowers? You want to plant flowers?
How about an oak tree? How about an oak tree? Oak tree's got roots.
Yeah, but I'm telling you right now, there had to be more depth to that.
Mm-hmm.
For 53 grown men not to just crack up and start laughing.
Well, it was because basically what he was talking about is, first of all, we have to plant a seed of what we want to become. And we in the media took it and ran off in all these different tangents with it, and we made fun of it, especially when they were down. They were 2-5 at one point, and all of a sudden we were talking about this flowers become a dandelion real quick. But we didn't get the true meaning behind what he was talking about. You've got to plant the foundation first and then watch it prosper. Now, it took a little bit more watering than anticipated to get this plant, flower, shrub, whatever it was, to grow and to sprout. But once it did, people said, uh-oh, we can't laugh now.
Sometimes
we can't laugh anymore.
You know what, D-Gun? Sometimes I wish I could be at the press conference.
Right.
Because I'm just a smart ass type to be like, hey Nick, man, how's that flower pot going?
And you know what? You would have been on the end like Robert Saleh. Now, remember Robert Saleh, the Jets head coach early in the season? When he came out, he said, we're taking names. We're taking names. And people are snickering when the Jets were down. Oh, Robert Saleh and the Jets are cashing in right now.
Well,
you'd have been on that end of it.
Not necessarily, because I would have done it tongue in cheek.
I know you would have.
And just trying to get a reaction out of him, because he got roasted. He got roasted over that last year. And a lot of people, the media, fans, everybody was like, "Do we have the right coach here?" And then all of a sudden they flipped the switch, and the rest is history.
Well, so there's my question. When nobody looked at him and said, that guy's the leader that this team needs, and certainly nobody expected this kind of start to the season for the Eagles. No one expected them at that point last year to make it into the playoffs. No one at that point looked at Jalen Hurts and said, well, that's the franchise quarterback. Now not only are we talking about an 8-0 Eagles team, possibly 9-0, we're talking about an MVP in Jalen Hurts. We're talking about potentially Coach of the Year in Nick Sirianni. We're talking about Executive of the Year in Howie Roseman. Looking back on it, what has worked for Nick Sirianni in turning this franchise back to a winner?
First of all, he had to get players to believe in what he was talking about. And it didn't take long, and it's a trickle-down effect. Once the veterans gravitated towards it, everybody else fell into place, and I mean the rookies, the newcomers coming in. A standard was set. Nick basically told his vets, this is what I expect from a team. This is the kind of culture I want in the locker room. That had already been established by his predecessor, Doug Peterson, in terms of locker room culture. We heard Doug Peterson so many times talking about locker room culture. Howie Roseman, locker room culture. That carried over because that was part of Nick Sirianni's introductory to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. I want high character guys. I want guys who buy in. Well, once you get the likes of a Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox to buy in, guys who know what it takes to get to the big dance, then everybody else is going to follow suit. Now, have those guys kind of snickered and said, it's a wait-and-see mentality, you might have had all kind of discombobulation within that locker room, but you didn't. Once the veterans established, hey, look, man, this is where we were. Our last game, we got embarrassed, okay? We lost our franchise quarterback. We lost our head coach that took us to a Super Bowl. Now we have this new regime in. Okay, so far I like what he's saying. It's similar to what his predecessor was saying. Let's see where it goes from here. And sure enough, once that happened, everybody else bought into it.
Can I share something with you guys, from an ex-player's perspective? Players don't really get caught up in what coaches said. It's the evidence, of things not seen that materializes over time that gets players to the point where they start to believe in a coach. The first thing a player wants to know, does that coach really care about me, or am I just another piece of meat here, okay? And the coach has to express to his players this level of care. It's, do you know my family? Do you know my kids' names? Do you care about what's going on in my life outside of football? As a successful head coach, those are things that you have to do. You have to get to know your players, because you got to understand each and every player and what it is that makes him tick. What is his button? Like, Buddy could talk about me in the newspaper or in a press conference or whatnot, and it never bothered me. You want to know why? Because I knew what he was doing. He was trying to motivate me. I mean, I was deeply motivated myself, so I would take what I needed, and all the other crap I let go out the other year. But not everybody's wired that way, okay? So he knew that he could deal with me that way. Everybody else, if they couldn't handle it, he just run them off. Well, we live in the age of emotional intelligence now, so you can't do that anymore. So what the coaching staff has to do is they got to get to know the personality of each and every player, okay, on their roster, and figure out, how do I motivate this guy? What is it that really motivates this guy to be the best that he can be? And secondly, when I talk about the evidence of, things not seen, they got off to a tough start last year. And Nick was saying some things, but then all of a sudden they turned it around. Now, they turned it around because they played solid defense, and Jalen was making some plays, with his legs, and making some plays down the stretch that he needed to make. So now they began to believe in, oh, that guy can potentially take us there. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is they're looking at the system. And how does the system, we saw Fletcher last year, arguing with his position coach last year because he didn't like how he was being used. What happened down the stretch, that changed that? You get to a point where all of a sudden you begin to look at what you're doing. And if what you're doing means that team can be successful, defense or offense can be successful, and then I can personally be successful, then you get buy-in. All that other stuff that the coach talk about, it don't mean anything.
I'll carry it a step farther if I can for a moment. All right, the mindset had to be established before the season started, because when you're 2-5, what's the first thing that happens in the locker room? Players start pointing fingers, people start grumbling. All of a sudden, media people, according to my anonymous sources, okay? You didn't hear any of that when this team was 2-5, okay? If anything, they grew tighter. And that starts with the coach. Mm-hmm. He says, you have to give it time. You have look, this is new. We didn't say there weren't going to be rough waters. We're in the middle of a storm right now. Mm-hmm. And I give that team and that coaching staff a lot of credit, because Jonathan Gannon's defense was being called out by everybody in the media and fans alike. You didn't hear his players talking about it publicly, except Fletcher Cox, who basically, I guess, had lip reading. Somebody was lip reading along the sideline and figured out he wasn't happy. But the rest of the team, nobody said anything.
Well, I'll tell you this: when you have veterans that's won a world championship,
absolutely,
that understand, what that scenario was like, because Carson Wentz's first year they went 9-7. They didn't make the playoffs in his rookie season. It wasn't until year 2 that they began to see the harvest of the seeds planted. In Carson's first year, if you will. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
So those veterans.
That was delicately put.
That was the seeds planted.
So those veterans, they know. See, when you got a group of veterans that's never been to the mountaintop, it's a different scenario. Doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the veterans really control the locker room. Okay, the coaches control what goes on once they get in the meeting room, once you get on the field. But in the locker room, the veterans and the leaders are the ones that carry the locker room. So those guys have been there before. They've been through the struggle and been to the mountaintop, so they know. So when they start speaking to those young guys and they start showing them the bling, hey, that changes mentalities, attitudes, and everything.
Them seeds, they can blossom to
there
this.
You go.
Let's go over to Lincoln Financial Field in South Philadelphia right
We'll
now.
be talking about flowers all night.
Where we set the stage for Eagles Commanders action.
Farzy started that.
Our man John McMullen is standing by. John, it's more than just flower talk. It's Eagles Commanders football. One of the questions I pose to these gentlemen I want to pose to you right now. When it comes to Jalen Hurts facing off not just against this defense of the Washington Commanders, but also Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera again for a second time this season, what do you think they learned and will apply against Jalen Hurts in this matchup tonight?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I've been talking about this all year, Mark. What do you try to take away first with this Eagles offense? And it's a difficult. It's more of a question for Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera than it is for Jalen Hurts, because Jalen's been very effective just taking what the defense gives him. So, if you go back to the first Washington game, it seemed to be A.J. Brown. That was Washington's goal to kind of take him out of the game, and Devontae Smith has his best game as a pro. So that's kind of the give and take you have. But I will say about that Washington defense, I think it's a little bit more talented than people realize. I think everybody knows the front is really good. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat. But I got to tell you, Cameron Curl's having a great year at safety. He's one of the best safeties in the NFL since he's been back. And I love that Benjamin St. Juste, the long corner they have, really young, really made A.J. Brown work, really made Justin Jefferson work a couple weeks ago, two of the best receivers in football. So they're pretty good, but one thing the Eagles have proven, they can beat you in a multitude of ways, and that's a conundrum for Jack Del Rio more than Jalen Hurts, because he'll just take what the defense gives him.
Hey, John, we've seen Washington make a transformation in their last 5 games. All 5 games have been decided by 4 points or less. They're 3-2 over the last 5 games. When you go back to when the Eagles played Washington in Week 3 compared to what we're seeing Washington do now, what are you looking for in terms of what could be a problem for this Eagles team this evening, if anything?
Well, I mean, if I'm the Washington offense, I'm going to try to run the football, Degon. I mean, no Jordan Davis. They didn't elevate Marvin Wilson, which kind of surprised me a little bit. So you're going to have Javon Hargrave, who's not a nose tackle, let's be honest. Stuffing the run is not the strength of his game. Pass rushing is. You're going to have Marlon Tuipulotu. Look, that's not Jordan Davis. So the Eagles are a poor tackling team. We've talked about that a lot. They should be able to run the football. And if you can run the football, you can shorten the game. And that would be my goal if I'm Washington. Just try to stay in the game, and maybe Taylor Heineke can make one of those signature plays in the fourth quarter. Maybe it's the back judge running into somebody like he did against Minnesota. Who knows? Crazy things happen in close games. That's sort of the path for victory if you're Washington. Got to keep it close in the fourth quarter, and then hopefully Montez Sweat, I talk about him a lot. Maybe it's a batted pass. Maybe something goes the other way. That's sort of how you have to go about this game if you're Washington.
Hey, John, what issues, if any, can Tyler Heineke present for the Eagles that Carson Wentz obviously couldn't? The offense is playing better. Scary Terry has now, resurfaced as, their go-to guy. When for weeks, Carson and he couldn't get on the same page. What is it that he can provide, for this Washington offense that Carson couldn't?
Well, first and foremost, I think he brings energy. I think he brings leadership. One thing I know, Taylor Heineke's not going to get sacked 9 times, Seth. He's going to get the football out of his hands. Now, he might, he'll take a sack or two trying to extend plays, but he's got that football IQ that he knows if the pass rush is coming, he's going to speed up and get rid of the football. That's something Carson has not developed. In fact, you could argue he's gotten worse as his career has gone on. So the Eagles are going to have to play a little bit differently defensively. But as for Taylor Heineke, look, skill set wise, he's very limited. Doesn't have a strong arm. I don't think he can consistently beat you with the passing game, but he's got that, whatever you want to call it, moxie, pluckiness, whatever. He makes one or two big plays that ignites his team. They want to play for him. So leadership, intangibles, a lot of stuff we talk about Jalen Hurts, but Jalen also brings the skill set along with it. But those intangibles, guys want to play for Taylor Heineke, and that's what he brings to Washington.
John McMullen, the JAKIB Media NFL insider. John, when it comes to Jalen Hurts himself, we mentioned earlier that he has 3 straight games with 100-plus passer rating. First time he's done that in his career, going for number 4 tonight. Right now, with the way the rest of the NFL played out over the weekend, considering the Cowboys losing, Josh Allen obviously losing in dramatic fashion to the Minnesota Vikings, do you think clear-cut right now Jalen Hurts has worked himself to be the front runner for the MVP in the NFL?
I wouldn't go front runner because I think Patrick Mahomes is the front runner because he has the reputation, he has the big numbers. You know, people are going to look at touchdown passes. But I do think Jalen Hurts should be ahead of Josh Allen now. I think he is. Actually, you know, Tua in Miami might be in the conversation more than Josh Allen. I don't think people realize the kind of year he's having. Well, yeah, Jalen Hurts is right in the mix. I think it's going to be really difficult to beat Patrick Mahomes out for that award because Kansas City's not going to go in the tank. They're going to win a lot of football games. He's going to put up the numbers, but it doesn't matter if he wins it or not, Mark. He's playing at an MVP level, and that's all that matters. So whether he's the actual MVP or not, it's a big award. I'm not going to say who cares, but he's going to have a difficult time because people are not going to – they're going to look at the raw numbers. They're going to look at the touchdown passes and yardage, and Patrick Mahomes is going to have more. But he's played at an MVP level.
John, this Eagles team has been so even keel in a lot of ways. When you talk to them from a media perspective, the line of response has been consistent. They know they don't get too big for the moment. They don't get down on the bad moments. Whatever does not work, they go back to the drawing board and try to iron those things out. Give me your perspective on how this team has handled adversity, because as we sit here right now, no matter what we think about what their flaws might be, they are still the only team left in the National Football League that has been able to overcome every adversity they face. Buffalo can't say that. Kansas City, Minnesota, nobody else but the Philadelphia Eagles can say that.
Yeah, and, a lot of it is they haven't had a ton of adversity, which I don't think is a bad thing, Derek. I don't think it is. To me, when people say, oh, you gotta come back in the fourth quarter, why? I don't want to be behind in the fourth quarter. It's great when you do, when you are able to come back. But, Nick Sirianni talked about that in the Jacksonville game when they got down by 14 points. He said, I don't want to be down 14 points. I'm glad the team responded. But you never want to be in that position. And the Eagles have pretty much put themselves in the front runner position, and that's where you want to be. You want to play from the lead. Everybody in this league wants to play from the lead. And in the certain games where they were forced to have a sense of urgency late, whether it was Detroit, Arizona, a little bit of Dallas, although not even that much in that game, they've responded. So the Eagles should embrace that they're the best team in football, not worry about what they haven't done because they are the best team in football. Mm-hmm. Don't play from behind if you don't have to play from behind.
John, the Eagles there's been a pattern this year. They play well enough to win, but there's also some games, where they haven't looked their best. I mean, you go to Houston last week, And it seemed like the defense hadn't tackled anybody, all season long, that they didn't know how to tackle, if you will. They've consistently had the ability that when they played bad or they didn't play up to the standard or they didn't play up to par, the following week they always come back and play and take it to another level. I don't foresee tonight being any different, but with James Robinson and Gibson that they're going to test that defense tonight to find out whether A, they want to tackle, and B, whether they can stop the run based upon what they looked like against the Texans last week.
Yeah, and they should. I mean, you saw what happened last week without Jordan Davis. Now you can add Avonte Maddox, who's on IR now, so he's going to miss 4 games. And Avonte, probably tries to strip it a little bit too much, but when he does focus on run support as a slot corner, he's very good, at least when it comes to run fits. Now you have Josiah Scott, who's going to be out there. Marlon Tuipulotu at nose tackle, or Javon Hargrave, as I mentioned, who's not really very good at it, to be honest. He's more of a pass rusher, more of a 3 technique. First thing I do is run the ball. I give it to James Robinson. I give it to Antonio Gibson. And if the Eagles stop it, then you go to plan B, but I'm going to force them to stop it first. I can tell you that if I'm Washington.
Just a quick follow to that, John. I'm of the opinion that they couldn't stop the run last week because they really don't want to live in a four-man front an awful lot. They really want to be in their 5-man look. Because they don't have Jordan Davis, now you have a situation basically where you're in the 4-man front. It kind of looked like their run defense last year, where they were doubling the 2 tackles, pushing them off the ball, getting up on the next level on the linebackers, and the linebackers did not know where to fit. They look like they have more of an idea where they're supposed to fit in the 5-man front, but that's something that they needed to have been working on, with the little mini bye coming off, the Thursday night game. I'd be very, very interested to see how they adjust to that because the linebackers were extremely average last game.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things, Seth, where they started out in 4-man fronts without Jordan Davis last week against Houston. And they were really poor early on. A lot of Dameon Pierce gashing the front, as you mentioned, a lot of poor run fits. Then they started to go with more of the 5-man fronts with Marvin Wilson, and they got a little bit better, but they weren't great either way. And that's the impact of Jordan Davis. They want to be in 5-man fronts early, first down, and then they want to go to 4-man fronts when it's the pass rush. Problem is, if you can't stop the run, that's what happened last year. All of a sudden, you're in 2nd and manageable, 3rd and manageable. Then it becomes really easy for the quarterback. And that's why, even though he wasn't playing a ton of reps, a ton of snaps, Jordan Davis had a really big effect on this defense because they're good as a run-stopping unit when he's on the field. They're not nearly as good when he's off the field. And when 2nd and 10 turns into 2nd and 4, when 3rd and 8 turns into 3rd and 2, that has a big impact on how you can call the defense, how many things you can do on defense. And this stretch of games without Jordan Davis is going to be really, really interesting, especially when you get to Indianapolis next week and you start talking about Jonathan Taylor. Then you start talking about Derrick Henry. Down the road, if Jordan's not back, even Saquon Barkley. Because remember, he's eligible to come back against Tennessee. Doesn't mean he's coming back for Tennessee.
All right, John, before we let you go, we're up against it. Just real quick, your prediction on tonight's game.
I do think, Taylor Heineke, as I mentioned, a little bit too limited. I don't know if Washington can score enough to end this run for the Eagles. I expect the Eagles to win the game 28-16, somewhere in that range.
Sounds good to me. John McMullen, our NFL insider for JAKIB Media, joining us from Lincoln Financial Field. John, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll be back with more JAKIB Media pregame show in a few.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
The big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Don't wait until after Thanksgiving for leftovers. It's the new leftover sales event at Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Jeff must get rid of hundreds of new 2022 vehicles on the lot. Rams, Grand Cherokees, Wranglers. Jeff has them all for less. Jeff has reduced prices and payments to the lowest they've been all year. And Jeff knocks down high interest rates. Save thousands, more than anywhere else. Plus, get more for any trade or lease return. You always win at Jeff's. Great selection, best price. Hurry in now. Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Nobody treats you better. Black Friday sales event.
Welcome back to the JAKIB Media Pregame Show. Marc Farzetta along with Derek Gunn and Eagles Hall of Famer Mr. Seth Joyner. Talking all things Eagles as you would expect ahead of the Commanders game tonight. Eagles have an opportunity to go 9-0. It's been 11 games since we sat here, gentlemen, talking about the Eagles getting ready for one of their kickoffs. Since then, the Phillies, unfortunately, have lost a World Series. Joel Embiid had a historic night, actually a couple incredible nights, and the Flyers have been outscored about 14-4, so that hasn't gone well. And we had our first John Tortorella rant. My point is, it's been a while since the Eagles kicked off. Before that, they also had a bye week. They played about 2 games in what seems like 29 days.
28
days.
28 days.
Yes.
It's been a little bit of football and a whole lot of everything else. How do the Eagles stay focused over that time, keeping their eyes on the prize, and make sure, most importantly, they stay sharp against an opponent that, I mean, look, they're 11-point favorites going into this game. How do they stay sharp, Seth, in a matchup like this?
I don't think it's a problem or an issue for them. I think the extra time, has been allotted for guys to, with little nicks and little nagging things to kind of heal up a little bit. Obviously, they had their bye after 6 weeks, but then you come back and you play, a Thursday night game, and then you got a Sunday night game, a Thursday night game, and now a Monday night game. There's a lot of time, in between there. So to me, it's another one of those situations for the coaches, to go back and self-scout and continue to look at what their tendencies are and the things that they do and how they can continue to keep defenses off balance. But I just don't see this football team, having an issue being focused. I mean, when you're 8-0 in the National Football League, if you lose focus, and you're undefeated, you got bigger problems, to deal with than I can imagine, because, I mean, listen, this is what you spend the entire offseason working for. This is what you lift all the weights for, do all the running for, do all the studying for, what you go through in training camp. You do all of that to win as many games as you can. And to come out of the gates and be 8-0 and all of a sudden you lose focus, something's really wrong.
Now, that focus, if I have to put my finger on it and say, the number one reason I think the Eagles are 8-0 at this point in the season is Jalen Hurts' play. You could also look to coaching. But overall, the mindset that both of you have talked about from the leadership of this team, not just coaches, but the veteran players, the focus of this team is what I think is to be celebrated the most and pointed to the most for the reason why they are undefeated to this point. I can't remember a team like this, Gunner, and maybe you would, in all the years you've covered the Eagles, a team this focused, I have not seen. This much with the eye on the prize, I have not seen.
Well, go back to the 2014. That was the veteran-laden team. You had guys like Brian Dawkins back there. You had Donovan McNabb. You had Brian Westbrook. You had Ike Reese. You had, Trot. You had all these guys. So they were a very focused squad. This team has to stay focused for one reason. They are one of the most talked about teams in the National Football League now. They're the ones with the biggest bullseye on their backs right now because everybody wants to knock them off that proverbial pedestal. And you have some teams that might be able to do it in different ways. That remains to be seen. But if this team has a mental lull period, the opposition will wake them up in a hurry once kickoff starts because the opposition is out to do something that nobody else has done up to this point, which is to put a blemish on an unblemished record.
Now, I want to ask you guys this. Looking at this past weekend, looking at this past Sunday, just yesterday, the craziness that ensued from Justin Jefferson's catch to their fumble in the end zone and then giving the ball back to the Vikings and then the Cowboys losing, falling to 6-3 on the season. Looking at this year with the way it's played out, especially up until last night, how do you think the narrative has changed around the Eagles with how much they've been talked about in terms of what light they're being talked about in now with the Bills falling again, the Cowboys falling again, and the Eagles all of a sudden being in the toughest division in the NFL in the NFC East? How do you think yesterday affected the narrative surrounding the Eagles?
Well, let me say this. I think record-wise you can make a case for the NFC East being the best conference in the NFL. I'm still not 100% sold on the Giants, even though I think they are formidable. We saw Dallas doing Dallas things again. They're like Slep Rock. Anything that can happen, normally will happen, and it'll happen multiple times before the season is over. If there's a way to screw it up, they'll screw it up. But when I look at, the total landscape, I think as the Eagles have been going along, I think everybody kept looking at Kansas City and looking at Buffalo and saying, well, those are the two toughest teams. Those are the two best teams in the NFL. The Eagles, let's look at their second to last schedule and look at, the resume that they have in comparison to these other two teams. Well, when you turn around and you lose to a Minnesota Vikings who the Eagles have beat, that puts a whole nother perspective on it. Kansas City was in position to lose that game last week, yet once again they figured out a way to win it in the end. The Eagles aren't going through those machinations at the end of a game trying to figure out how to win it. They're just flat out beating the people that they play. So even when they got off to like 4-0, 5-0, I said, you know what, the Eagles, they may be, in my power ranking, it's Buffalo, Kansas City, or Kansas City, Buffalo, and the Eagles, and then Buffalo beat Kansas City. And I said, okay, Buffalo, Eagles, Kansas City. Based upon what I've seen and what I've witnessed the last 2 or 3 weeks, it'd be hard-pressed for anybody to look me in the eye and tell me that the Philadelphia Eagles aren't the number one team in everybody's power ranking in the NFL. I don't care what you see or what you think. Just based upon the record and based upon their body of work and how they win. And you guys hear me preach and talk about how you win is as important as if you win sometimes. You hear me say that all the time. So when you're starting to rank these teams, yes, you got to look at how they win. Kansas City just squeaked by. Josh Allen hasn't been playing great lately with, 2 touchdowns. He's averaging two interceptions per game over the last 2 or 3 games. So you really can't tell me that, Buffalo's all that great. They're beatable. They're gettable. And the team that the Eagles destroyed, they absolutely destroyed Minnesota. They just went into Buffalo, went in their backyard and stole their cookies and milk.
I do want to ask you this. Where does that Justin Jefferson catch rank in your book, gentlemen?
That one might be right behind Odell Beckham's catch.
Right. So you have it behind Odell Beckham.
I would put it ahead of Odell's.
Huh?
I would put it ahead of Odell.
No way.
Odell Beckham was the best I ever seen.
No way. Listen,
Jefferson
went
up,
Odell
took it from between the man's hands, caught it on his hip, came down with the ball in control. Odell Beckham's catch is spectacular. I'm not saying it. But you know what? We've seen just a few weeks ago, DeAndre Hopkins snagged one like Odell on one hand in the end zone. In the same game, Stephon Diggs made an incredible one-handed catch. That man went up and took it from a dude's hands.
Let me tell you something.
You kidding
Took
me?
it from his chest.
Odell Beckham
From his chest, his back, his butt, everything.
Odell Beckham reached behind his head.
Yes, he did.
He couldn't even see the ball. They call it hand-eye coordination for a reason, because guess what? Wherever your eyes go, your hands follow, okay? The ball was out of his eyesight. He had the ball right here in his hand, and by the time he caught the ball was out of his vision, behind and over his head. Man, let me tell you something. That might be the most spectacular catch I've ever seen.
Man, look, it's like you say potato, I say potato, because here's the thing.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
There you go, because this defender.
Anyone have a piano?
You know what? He almost threw me off for a second. He almost messed me. The defender had 2 hands on the ball. Justin Jefferson took his hand and snatched it out of this man's hands, came down, rolled it down his body.
He just got mossed.
He what?
He just got mossed.
No, that was moss times 3.
Listen, he just got mossed.
That was just not just the moss.
That catch, on the fingertips.
The reason I bring it up because the Eagles shut down that offense, of course, that and the Washington Commanders did a heck of a job against them just a week ago as well. One more thing I want to get in before we move on to our predictions for tonight. Happy birthday, Devontae Smith. Now, Devontae Smith had a heck of a game against these Commanders the last time they faced off, 169 yards and touchdown receptions.
Is it his birthday today?
I believe it's today or yesterday.
Yes, okay.
The bottom line is he might be looking for a birthday gift, a touchdown he hasn't had in quite a little bit here with the Philadelphia Eagles. Will tonight be a night he gets in the end zone, do you think, Connor?
Well, in the end zone. I thought you meant a big game. In the end zone. Wow. I don't know. You know what?
Let him eat.
It depends on what Washington presents. Are they going to roll the coverage to him? Are they going to roll it to A.J.? It remains to be seen. I can't. Politically correct answer is I cannot answer you, Mr. Farzetta.
Okay, copy that. All right. Now,
I'll give you an answer.
What do you got?
Hey, listen. Not only is he going to have his cake, he's going to eat it too. The Eagles have too many weapons, okay, to be stopped. And you're going to have to pick your poison. Yeah, Devontae took them apart last game. But I promise you they probably look at it as an anomaly when you look at 2 weeks later, A.J. Brown exploded again like he did in week 1. And then coming off of last week, Dallas Goedert 8 catches on 9 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown. Who are you going to take away? You know, if you focus on Devontae Smith because he beat you before, then you're going to get beat in other areas. So I look for them to try to play straight up. If I was the defense coordinator, okay, I play straight up to begin with. I want to see what the game plan is. Let me get through the first quarter, and I know that they're jogging out in the second quarter, but I want to see how they're trying to attack me in the first quarter, so now I can make my adjustment as to who they're going to go after and what they're going to do, because they just got too many weapons, man.
My answer is based on who gave them the most nightmares last game.
Devontae Smith.
Who do I not want to give me those same nightmares?
So then, if you're an offensive coordinator, you got to be thinking along those lines. Okay, if they're going to try to take him away, let's game plan over here.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said.
Listen, I get it 100%. But when you do that, you're playing right into the hands of the offense. You have to play it straight up to begin with, just to see what the game plan is going to be. Because the minute you start sending 2 people his way, the minute you make a decision to take him out, guess what?
You're going the other
A.J.
way.
Brown is going to tear you to pieces. And then once he starts to flow, then you get Dallas Goedert running across the middle with these undersized DBs running after him or in coverage against a linebacker, and you're going to get hurt there too.
Right.
So I would just play balanced up until you show me your hand, what your game plan is. Now we can adjust based upon what you've shown me through the first 10 to 12 minutes of the first quarter.
Worth noting when talking about how aggressive that defense can be, they blitz at 33%, second highest in the NFL. So I do expect more of that, what both you guys were talking about earlier in the show. Now it's come to time for our predictions for tonight's Eagles-Commanders game. Gunnar, would you like to take the lead on predictions for tonight?
Yeah, might as well get it over with. As I said off the top of the show, this Washington team seems to play with more energy with Taylor Heineke under center. Doesn't mean they're that much of a better team, but they do make it more entertaining. The games have been close. All 5 of their last games decided by 4 points or less. I guarantee you, Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio have told their players, "Look, you got embarrassed the last time you faced this team. We're not that same team anymore." I think it's going to be an NFC East backyard brass knuckle brawl. I look for the Eagles to come out in this game like 27-20.
27-20.
Yeah.
Touchdown they do not cover. Seth?
Trust me, they are the same team. They just got a different quarterback.
Who won't take 9 sacks.
No, he won't take 9 sacks, but he'll throw it to you.
He'll throw it to you.
He'll actually to get you off of him. He'll actually walk over and hand it to you.
But they have Jahan Dotson back also, which gives him another target to throw to in this game tonight.
Listen, I hear you, but this team rises to the occasion. I'm telling you, last week, even though they won that game last week, it was embarrassing the way that they played run defense last week. It just was. That game should have been over at halftime, and they couldn't get it there until the third quarter because they couldn't get the run game under control. That being said, listen, the Eagles are just a superior team. They're rested. They're missing some pieces, but I think they figure out a way to raise their level because of how they played defensively last game. And I just think that, Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Jalen Hurts, I just think they got this mojo going where they got everybody on their heels. They got everybody on their skates defensively, and they got to answer for everything. I think that the Commanders can score some points tonight, just because of the improved passing game, but the Eagles win this game 38-24.
38-24, even more comfortable right there. I got them at 27-13. Eagles winning this game. Comes down to the almighty turnover. Eagles winning that battle handily today, if de facto winning this game handily as well and covering. This has been the JAKIB Media Pregame Show. Thanks to all our friends, JAKIB Media YouTube channel, 6abc.com. For Derek Gunn, Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joyner, my name is Marc Farzetta. Devin Caney and myself, as well as John McMullen, will be along with you guys for halftime of Eagles Commanders, and then after, it's the postgame show brought to you by Pond La Hockey. Mike Missinelli will be joining the crew then. Have a great night, everybody, and go Birds.
Jim Thompson was an extremely successful man who touched many lives during his distinguished broadcast career. Jim was president of the Broadcast Foundation of America. The foundation has distributed millions of dollars to colleagues who are facing life's most difficult challenges. And the foundation has created a special fund in honor of his work. To make a donation in his name, simply visit the foundation website at www.broadcastersfoundation.org.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
My husband hadn't missed work in 15 years. His injury required months of rehabilitation, and unfortunately, the insurance company didn't see it that way. I was working 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. One conversation with Pond Lee Hockey changed everything. We sat down, told them our story, and they guided us through the whole workers' compensation legal process.
Pond Lee Hockey. Tell us your story.
The faces you know, the team you trust. The Delaware Valley's leading news program, Action News.
Celebrating the life of your loved one is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givenish. When the matriarch of the Dalloway family died suddenly at 82 years old, Life Celebrations by Givenish stepped in.
They will make this the easiest thing that I know it's not easy, but they will make this as easy as possible.
Life Celebrations by Givenish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
I just know that my dad, who is in charge of everything, was not in charge of anything at that point when my mom passed. And again, just another shout out to this place for making it easy.
Turning tragedy into a celebration of life, no matter how hard, is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givenish. Life Celebrations by Givenish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
Continue your communication sciences and disorders education at South University within the Doctor of Audiology or Masters of Science in Speech-Language Pathology programs. With state-of-the-art labs, on-campus clinics, and extensive externship opportunities, students position themselves to be at the top of the job market. Stand out in the audiology and speech-language pathology profession by visiting salis.edu.